Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mafia and Gangsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. I haven't done one of these actually in a good while, since about October or so last year, so I thought I would mix these in while I'm continuing the aliens and UFOs video. I also thought I would touch on these videos once again because it seems like there's a good number of views happening with my past videos. Some of them small, couple hundred views, but most of them now have 1,000 or more, and then some of them have even several thousand, and in others even more so. So, as always, when it comes to these videos, I thought it would be a nice treat to share this one here. These videos are actually the names, whoever I talk about, I just pick a random name from a website called thefullwiki.org. And in this place, they have a very nice listing of several hundred of the more popular names out there in the world of the Mafia, at least based on popularity when it comes to their ranking. So I just basically just pick one name out of the group, just a random one, whatever my mouse lands on. And in this case, it has to do with this guy that you're looking here. His name is James Martorano, but as always, they have a nickname, and in this case, his nickname is Jimmy, so it's James Jimmy Martorano, and he's actually tied to two other prominent members of a gang that I'll talk about more here in a minute, called the Winter Hill Gang. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with James Jimmy Martorano. So who is this guy, this James Jimmy Martorano? He was someone that was born on December 10th, 1941. I don't know though if he's still alive to this point. I believe so. I presume so, actually, because there's no other information indicating that he's deceased. But he was someone that was born with his brother, his older brother, John Martorano, of about 11 months. They were born and then they were living in a place called Somerville, Massachusetts. Eventually, though, they ended up moving to another place called East Milton, Massachusetts, and for all intents and purposes, that seems to be where they grew up afterward. Both of them would basically follow each other when it comes to their careers, their quote-unquote careers in the mafia world. Their father was someone who was born actually in Sicily, Italy, to be specific, and so he was an immigrant from there, and I believe, if I'm reading the information correctly, his father was someone that had ties to the mafia world there, and that seemed to influence what the brothers would do afterward. This guy, though, James Jimmy Martorano, is unique in that he grew up in that area and ended up going to a prominent college, in this case, Boston College, where he attended and achieved a Bachelor of Arts. In fact, he had several athletic scholarships given to him as an opportunity to attend college. That's unique because you hardly ever read about mafia members starting off or going to some kind of college or university. His brother is a guy by the name of John Martorano. More on him in a minute, but his brother was also offered several scholarships, but he in turn ended up turning it down. So this guy, though, this James Jimmy Martorano, was the one that went to that school and then graduated. Eventually, though, it seems like in the world of the mafia, it was too much of an influence, both from his brother going into that world, and then I think again his father, and sometime by 1976, so about the mid-70s or so, this guy Jimmy Martorano was fully involved in that world. In fact, he was with this gang known as the Winter Hill Gang. So if that sounds familiar, it has to do with the fact that it was run by a guy who's now deceased, but who was very, very prominent within the world of the mafia, James Whitey Bulger, to be specific. So he was someone that ran that gang, and then these two brothers, including James Jimmy Martorano, was involved in that gang as well. John Martorano, the brother, seemed to be one that was more involved on the, I guess, if you call it, the more violent side, like when it came to murders and executions. This guy, though, James Jimmy Martorano, was more involved in the traditional side. Like, he was someone that was doing racketeering, extortion, involving, I don't know if it was prostitution, but there was something else that was unique as far as involving fixing horse races. That's something that you hardly ever hear when it comes to the world of mafia. But yes, there he was also doing that. And it seemed like he was just a full-time member. I don't know if he was a made member, presumably so, but still, he was by that time fully involved in the world of the Mafia for the Winter Hill Gang. But as irony turns out, when it comes to this world, this guy, James Whitey Bulger, as I was mentioning earlier, he in turn ended up being an informant for the U.S. government. So I don't know, though, if the brothers knew, presumably not, because at that point, this guy, for this video here, James Jimmy Martorano, ended up going to jail for the very stuff that the James Whitey Bulger was mentioning to everyone else. So as far as the U.S. government, they were getting all this prominent evidence from him, from James Whitey Bulger, and they did not know, the brothers in this case, that they were getting that information, that this guy Bulger was giving them that information. And so Jimmy Martorano ended up going to jail after it. He was convicted from it, and him and several other gang members were also sent to jail. And that in turn, he spent a couple of years within prison, but using his achievement that he had there from Boston College. Remember, he got that Bachelor of Arts there. He ended up studying law while being incarcerated, and then he ended up making appeals using the knowledge that he had learned, that he had studied. He ended up using several appeals to try to overturn his conviction. It got to the point, actually, where he was granted a brand new trial in 1980. So how about that? Here was a guy, again, that was using his academic achievements to be able to learn the system, and then he ended up getting a new trial. This, though, was reversed. I don't know that basically, like, if he was let out or if he was convicted and still like had to serve the rest of his term. Either way, though, he was eventually released, and when he did so, he became a paralegal. So how about that as well? Here he was, in this case, becoming a paralegal working for a law firm after he got out of jail. But eventually, he turned back into a life of crime, this guy James Jimmy Martorano, and by the early 1990s, he was there involved, not just in the Winter Hill Gang, but I believe also with another crime family, as I read it, called the Genovese crime family. And he was indicted. There was investigation going on at that time period, recordings, the usual kind of surveillance that you see in this kind of stuff in the movies. He was there. He was convicted. He was found talking about gambling, about extortion, and then also murder within those conversations. So his trial was placed. Him and 8 other people, they were all sent to trial. His was placed separately, though, from the other ones. And then here's where things get mysterious. I tried to see if there could be any evidence, anything showing out there what the results were of his trial. I could not find anything. So if anyone knows that updated information as far as what happened to the trial of James Jimmy Martorano, that'd be great to share. Please post them in those comments below. So I can't tell now if he was either found guilty or if he was found not guilty or if he was sent to prison or if he was paroled. Who knows? And even then, today, like looking at the information on the internet, I cannot find if James Jimmy Martorano is still out there alive. Like if he's alive or he's deceased. Considering his date of birth, he would be in around the late 70s or so. So when it comes to his whereabouts, I have no idea. So if someone has any updated information on that, just to share on an informational standpoint, then please post those comments below as well. But yes, indeed, at least the latest updated news from him was back then, again in the early 90s, where he was indicted and he was going to go to trial for all that stuff. But that's the last things that are known of this guy, this James Jimmy Martorano. One last bit of note. as far as his brother, John Martorano, who I was mentioning earlier, was more on the violent side. The guy that was, he himself stated that he probably killed over 20 people while working for the Winter Hill Gang. He, in turn, actually ended up becoming an informant as well for the U.S. government. As it turns out, when he learned about what James Whitey Bulger did, as far as Whitey being an informant himself, for the U.S. government, he felt that that was a huge betrayal. So when the opportunity came and he was in prison, the brother John Martorano, he ended up cutting a deal with the U.S. government to provide them information, and in that way, once James Whitey Bulger was found yet again, this information helped to give him like rock solid evidence straight from the mouth of somebody within that organization. Of course, it seemed like the brother did it because of what occurred to his own brother, James Jimmy Martorano, and how he was sent to jail because of what James Whitey Bulger told the U.S. government. So kind of like a twist of irony when it comes to this world, how one basically talked about the other and then the other talked about them afterward, and all of it tied into James Jimmy Martorano. But that's pretty much it. So what do you guys think as far as this mafioso, this Jimmy Martorano? If anybody again has any more info, something might have missed, please post those comments below, especially the latest info as far as like what happened with his trial. That'd be really great to share. I'd be interested to hear what the whereabouts of that trial was afterwards. So all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.